Here it is. This is the second Short Fiction Saturday. Now, this one I'm going to have a theme for. They're not always going to be themed, but this one is going to be stories that are terrifying or demented in some way. I'm recording this in the middle of August, so it's not really spooky season or anything. I will definitely do a spooky Short Fiction Saturday in October. But I want to dive into some stories because I was looking at stuff that I wanted to talk about, and I realized most of them were like messed up in some way or another. And I thought, let's just make a theme of it. So we're going to dive right into it with The Screwfly Solution by James Tiptree Jr. It was published under her other pen name, Raccoona Sheldon. This was in Analog Science Fiction and Fact, June 1977. This story is wild. So the premise is there's a virus or something going around, and it is infecting only men. And what it is doing is making the men crazy and violent toward women. It's just like amplifying some wiring in their brain, and it's very dark and very dystopian, and it's an epistolary, which is a really interesting way of telling a scary story like this. I'm trying to figure out how much of it I can go into. There's a lot of stuff going on in this. There's this virus that might be going around causing this, but also there is like this misogynistic cult of these men that are like, women are the reason why the earth is messed up. They're why everything is going bad. We need to do something about it. Very rational, normal people fall into this cult and go insane. You spend a lot of the story trying to figure out how many of these people have been infected versus how many of these people feel like this. It won the Nebula Award for Best Novelette in 1978. And the story starts with an exchange of letters between Alan, a scientist working on this parasite eradication in Colombia, and his wife Anne, this concerning epidemic that is happening. And it's like back and forth, and it's like, well, just be safe, don't go out, blah, blah, blah. Everything's fine here. He's telling his wife and all that. As these murders of women spread across the country, there's more and more of that weird death cult, and they're called the Sons of Adam. I'm not going to go any further because like I said, you spend time trying to figure out how much of this is a disease versus how much of this is just like the world falling apart. A lot of James Tiptree Jr.'s stories involve that. There's like another one I can't remember the name of, but a guy causes the end of the world. It's just a really unsettling story. That's the main thing that all of these have in common. Not so much that they're terrifying or scary. They are just very unsettling, which is fun to read about sometimes. Like I said before, in this whole setup, I'm just going to share some short fiction I enjoy. Hopefully these are short videos because we're talking about short fiction. Now, this one is unsettling in a different way, and kind of a funny way. This is The Bottle Party by John Collier. It's called Bottle Party in his anthologies, but it was originally published in Esquire magazine in October of 1939. John Collier is a fantastic author, just a prose stylist, a step above most other people. And he's got these weird, kind of fantastical premises for stuff, and they work so well, and it's so wonderfully written. Bottle Party is about a guy who gets a genie, and he gets this genie from this shop that he finds in New York City. He's wandering around, and it's the shop wasn't there, and now it's there, and he goes in, and the guy's like, hey, this shop's been here a long time. It's nice to finally see a customer come in looking for something, blah, blah, blah. And the guy's like, well, what do you sell? And he's showing him all these things. And then the guy's like, well, what's in those bottles? And he's like, you don't want what's in the bottles. And he's like, no, I want to know what's in the bottles. And he's like, well, this one is a beautiful princess. She's trapped inside the bottle. And then this bottle you definitely don't want. And it's a genie. And he's like, yeah, he's a little grumpy that he's in there, blah, blah, blah. And at the time I'm thinking, is this really a genie? But the way John Collier writes it, it just feels normal, but in a weird way. So this guy's like, well, I'm going to get this genie. I'm going to get these wishes. I'm not going to be lonely anymore, blah, blah, blah. And he takes the genie home. And then interesting things happen. And it has a really unsettling ending in a way that I did not expect. It came out of nowhere. I knew that it was going to not be a good time for the characters involved, at least some of them, but I didn't realize it was going to be that bad of a time. It is quite the weird story. I highly recommend it. I've just got into John Collier, and I've really enjoyed his writing. And then in one of the recent McGee rereads, John D. MacDonald quoted a John Collier story in this really good kind of disturbing way that fits perfectly into the way John Collier writes, so I can't recommend it enough. I have never heard anyone ever talk about John Collier, so I had to mention him. I keep saying his name. I'm trying to drill it into your brain so you will read some of his fiction so that there's more than one of us that knows what a John Collier is. You can get it on like Esquire's website. I think you have to have a subscription, but you can read the article. You can just type Bottle Party John Collier Esquire and it shows up. So I guess read it there, or if you can find a copy of Fancies and Good Nights, his anthology that is excellent so far. Probably the best way to get a hold of a copy. Unfortunately, everything today, I can't really share links to places to read them for free. When I read old stuff or stuff that is public domain or at least available in some way for free, I will put it in a pinned comment, but that's not the cards today. Let's move on. So these next two are both from New Terror, which is a horror anthology that was edited by Ramsey Campbell, and it came out in 1980. There's a UK version that's slightly different, and then there is a pocket books edition that was published here in the US that has one of the stories I'm going to talk about at the end, and it's in New Terrors 2 in the UK version. But you can get a New Terrors anthology as like a mass market paperback. That is another thing that sucks. It's only mass market paperback and hard to find, but you can read these stories other places, and I will mention where they're available. Well, this one you can't, actually. I lied. This is City Fishing by Steve Rasnick. I don't know if it's been published anywhere else. Maybe it's been published under his name, Steve Rasnick Tim. I'm going to look. Yeah, you can get it in Figures Unseen, Selected Stories. It's a collection of his, but I read it in New Terrors. And City Fishing is a story from a boy's point of view as his dad gets him in the back of the car. They're going to go fishing, and there's another dad in the car and another kid. And when they pull out of the driveway to go fishing, instead of turning to go out into like nature toward a lake or something, they're driving into the city, and the kid's looking out the window and he's listening to this conversation that his dad's having, and it's getting stranger and stranger. And the further you get into the city, the more abstract and weird things become. This concrete jungle starts to become like a fever dream blend of nature and dystopian city. The scenery starts to shift, and it gets weirder and weirder and more intense until the climax of the story. And it is so unsettling. I finished reading it and I was like, what the hell did I just read? It's that kind of short story. I highly recommend it. If you can find a copy of New Terrors, you will have a great time. There is not a bad story in there. There's Gene Wolfe, Ramsey Campbell, all sorts of really good stuff. And one of the best stories in that collection is Big Wheels, A Tale of the Laundry Game by Stephen King. You can also read this in Skeleton Crew. It is the second Milkman story. This is such a good story. Like, it's everything Stephen King does great, because he is so good at pulling out of his life and writing very interesting stories. And the two characters in this story, they work at a laundry, like a big like factory that cleans laundry, and Stephen King had that job like during college or in between college or right after he got out, something like that, and the job sucked, and it's very blue collar working class. This story takes place in like 1969, so it's like when he would have been working there. And these two guys get off work and they're just getting like more and more drunk as they drive around. One of them is trying to find a place to get his car inspected because his inspection goes out at midnight that night, and they're just looking for a place to get an inspection done. And he remembers a place, and they go there, and he like runs into the building like with his car because he's drunk, and the mechanic comes out and is like, what the hell are you doing? And they realize they know each other like from like high school or something, and they're kind of reminiscing, and the other character is just getting more and more drunk until he's like delirious, and they get back in their car after they get it inspected, and they're driving, and one of the guys keeps looking back, and he's like, there's someone following us. And it alludes to the previous Milkman story. It ends in a very dark Stephen King way, and it's so good. One of the things that everyone says Stephen King thrives at is dialogue and kind of and an understanding of normal Americans, how they talk, how they act, kind of how they were, especially in 1969. That's one of the things I like about John D. MacDonald, is he's making these still lifes of what life was like at the time that the stories were written. And that is 100% the kind of thing Stephen King does. But this is like on the unhinged end of that spectrum, because we're talking about Stephen King. It's a great story. I highly recommend it. Definitely give John Collier and James Tiptree Jr. a try as well. These are all great. I hope that this series is going to last a long time. As long as I keep reading short fiction, it should last. Let me know in the comments if you like this format. Let me know if there's any way I can improve it. Let me know what short fiction you have been enjoying lately. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.